Thank you for waiting. We'll start the closing session. President Sasae, please.
I have been intellectually excited to listen to the 2 days of discussions by practitioners, including current ministers and global experts. I'm sure you are all tired and want to go to bed, but still, I can say that we had a wonderful discussion. It is difficult, if not impossible, to summarize the details of the entire scope of thought-provoking discussions, but I'd like to look back on them with gratitude to the experts who took the stage and to the audience who watched the discussions and asked incisive questions. Prime Minister Ishiba, as you all know, attended the first evening session and gave a speech from here. Prime Minister Ishiba developed a dynamic discussion that was also consistent with the session held yesterday to discuss the lessons of history. He shared with us a very dynamic discussion. He also particularly touched on how the United Nations was established after World War II and mentioned the need to restore the functions of the UN and other global architecture. Regarding his meeting with President Trump, he expressed his determination to realize it as soon as possible. He says he will have a frank discussion with the leader, build a strong relationship of trust and cooperation, and take the Japan-US alliance to a higher level. I felt very much encouraged by them. Toward the end of the second session, there was a question as to what kind of advice you would say, and I'm sure you had a very good time listening to the answers. And if I have the opportunity, I'd like to communicate what was answered to Mr. Ishiba. This year's TGD focused on the way to deal with the Trump administration, and I can safely say that this was a major theme or a central pillar of our discussions. And I think this is a reflection of the potential impact of what Mr. Trump would do or not do for the international situation. In particular, many felt Trump's lack of interest in the international order, the danger of making deals that leave allies out of the loop, and his willingness to impose punitive tariffs on countries he dislikes. There was also a suggestion that Trump himself wants to play the role of a bad cop to the leaders of the West and the good cop to Putin and Kim Jong-un. Whether this is true or not, would be determined by the kind of things Mr. Trump would do in the years to come. And many people said that we are still in the initial phase, and it is impossible to predict what he would or he would not do at this moment. However, it was pointed out that it is not new or unusual for the U.S. president to be transactional, and that it is perfectly possible for countries, including Japan, to strengthen relationship. The U.S. is saying that the America should be number one, and so the U.S. first policy, and we, as the allied nations, it is important for us to assist President Trump to make sure that he will do much better. And so in the last session, we were able to have a very good discussion. President Trump, who comes from we have been having a very good relationship and friendship for 80 years after the war, and there have been good times, and also there have been some concerns raised for that. But it is not that the Allied framework has been shaken. So it is deeply possible for us to consider how to deepen and strengthen the alliance in the years to come. So the President Trump will understand that the alliance network with which the United States has built friendship for 80 years after the war remains strong, and that it is more cost-effective for the United States to utilize it. In the European context, there was a heated discussion centered on the response to the war in Ukraine. In his keynote speech, Estonian Defense Minister Pekko said that, well, actually he mentioned three things. One is that there should be just peace. The just peace must be achieved with Russia compensating for the damage it caused to Ukraine. And the second is that it must be a lasting peace. And the third point was the peace through strength. The strength is important, and the strength is essential because if force is not effective, these conditions cannot be met. So in this regard, we can say that he emphasized the importance of the military power, and this might be unique to the Estonia, given the environment. But at the same time, we can say that this is a reflection of the overall discussion in Europe. In the case of the Estonia has also stated that it will increase its military spending to 5% of GDP because it is far cheaper than going to war. How to interpret this is that it is important to have much complicated calculations. So I think that these comments set the tone for the discussion about the European issue. So this is quite essential, and we were able to learn a great deal from this. In addition, other panelists pointed out the strong linkage between the security environment in Europe and Asia, and stated that how to end the war in Ukraine is critically important in order to deter adventurous behavior in Asia. How to end is the determining factor here. And they also stated that the very fact that European ministers and former ministers are invited to discuss European security in Tokyo, it was an epoch-making event and evidence that the situation in Europe is at a critical juncture. In the Indo-Pacific session, the discussion was billed as a discussion of the region's choke points. Many people said that these are not the choke points, but rather the Indo-Pacific was not a region of choke points, but rather one of fault lines. And there has been some nuanced approach here. And here, so in this point, on the other hand, so that means that the presence of the Trump administration is also acting as a check on China, and there were also analyses presented that suggested that stable conditions would continue in the short term, while there were also calls for hope in the Indo-Pacific region. And then the region's minilateral initiatives. Multilateral is important, but the regional or maybe minilateral and also bilateral relationships are also emphasized amid such damage to the global architecture. And then discussions also included whether North Korea, which is deepening ties with Russia, will approach the Trump administration. And also they talked about North Korea's nuclear arsenal. And there was the discussion about the relationship with Russia in this field. There was also a question about the possibility of South Korea possessing nuclear power, and I think it was a comprehensive discussion of Asian security.
私が
And I greatly learned from the discussion around AI. I am not a technology person. I have difficulty even using a PC. So these kinds of discussions are always difficult for me. but the panelists spoke in a way that was very easy for amateurs to understand. So the impact of emerging technologies such as AI, what would that be on the security? That was discussed in a very good way. So I was overwhelmed by the potential that AI holds. Needless to say, AI is an open technology, so no one country can enjoy asymmetrical dominance for a long period of time. On the other hand, there was also a warning about the danger of the gap between the haves and have-nots widening. So for AI, there's possibility that strategic stability will not be maintained, and the have-not countries will become even more vulnerable, and so that international relations will deteriorate. So in this morning session, there was an exciting conversation, representative of UN and IT company, and so the important thing is the human factor, to have the human in the loop. And the potential of AI is something we need to continue to pursue. What is the best regulation is something that we need to continue to debate. And finally, in the final session, we talked about the global architecture, what to do about it, and impact of the new U.S. administration was discussed. Concerning geopolitics, so there were various hopes and expectations expressed. So the Trump administration, they have the target of ending wars. How are they going to achieve that? And we as allies, or together with us allies, what kind of collaborative relationships can be built was discussed. Also the dark side, I don't know if it should be called that, but the dark side of the Trump administration, the challenge to the international liberal order, or their position against it, that may reverse the progress that has been built over many years. So there was concern expressed about that possibility. So there's the this is related to the swings in the U.S. domestic politics, but this is a fact of life. We have to accept that reality and make an effort to create the best architecture. And finally, about the role of Japan, that was discussed. We have hard power. At the same time, we have soft power. We have to capitalize on that. And it was pointed out that Japan can play a bigger role by doing so. So that was a very encouraging message. So last year, in the Tokyo Global Dialogue, in the closing, I said that even if Trump becomes president, the decision of Trump is prominent, but we should not overreact. We have to look at his actions and carefully pursue policy. That's what I said. Well, second Trump administration is now in place, starting its activities. And that approach, I think, is even more important. So the policies that each country deems necessary, they should strongly promote it. And where interests converge with the U.S., they should explain that to the U.S. and to the domestic population. And in Japan, we have to look at our defense posture. Is what we currently have sufficient? And what we need to do, what kind of measures we need to do. Are there any measures? Are there not? So that's something we have to discuss. So there's homework on our side as well. Now, the fact is that the Trump administration is not going to be highly predictable. And since policy coordination with the U.S. Could become more difficult than before, there is that possibility. And in this regard, I'd like to request that the U.S. government maintain close communication with its allies and partner countries. 2+2 and various frameworks should be utilized for cooperation between Japan and the U.S. And so dialogue is important, although that may be a cliche. And it's not in the interest of the U.S. To take a policy that will bring about suspicion amongst the liberal camp. We have to express that message that's going to be a big challenge for us. So that's a rough summary. During this year's dialogue, I hope that we were able to give you some materials, food for thought, as you think about the future. So thank you for joining us to the end.
笹江理事長、ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Mr. Sasae. With this, the 6th Tokyo Global Dialogue has come to a close. Thank you very much for your participation over the past 2 days. At this point, we'd like you to give a round of applause to all the panel members and the moderators in the last 2 days. Thank you very much.